This is a Haunted Attraction Network production. Achieve more with all our products at www.hauntedattractionnetwork.com.
This is the Scare Peddlers, where we interview the scariest vendors in the haunted attraction industry.
Hey Haunters, welcome back to the Scare Peddlers for 2006. I have with me Kevin. Kevin, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us today.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So I came across Kevin's work when one of his Facebook posts actually went viral. I consider 7,475 shares on Facebook alone to be viral. And Kevin is a ceramicist, and he makes pottery. And specifically, this post was these mugs that are zombie heads. So zombie head mugs.
Zombie face mug, that'll work.
Yeah, zombie face mugs. And the detail on these is absolutely extraordinary. And I hope that if you guys are only listening to this on the audio version, that you look in the show notes, because there'll be links to Kevin's pages and some pictures in there. And if you're listening to this or you have access to our magazine, there'll be an article in January's issue with Kevin's pottery, and you can see these pictures because they're absolutely phenomenal, and the level of detail on this is incredible. All these are reasons why I wanted to bring Kevin on the show. Kevin, why don't you tell us a little bit about where you are now with the shop? Yeah,
I just did a pre-order right before Christmas, and I limited it to 20 mugs, and I sold those 24 minutes. Those sold. So now that's basically what I'm doing now on my break. I'm just working to get those 20 mugs completely finished. I've got about 5 sculpted already. So then I have to go through the whole glazing and firing process. So hopefully I'll have those completely done and shipped out and to the owners by the end of January, and I'll be working on the next batch for another release in February. And that's about it right now. I've actually started, the reason I was able to do 20 mugs is because I've just got into actually casting some of my pieces. I've never done that in the past. I just started that probably 2 weeks ago. I hooked up with a lady nearby here in Atlanta, and she makes ceramic molds for a living, so she came highly recommended, and I got a hold of her, and she showed her what I was doing, and she thought it was pretty cool. No doubt would be difficult to create a mold from this, though, a ceramic mold at least, using plaster. But she got the job done. It was really cool. And so right now I have 2 molds that we're working with, and so I'm able to produce a lot faster than I was. The 3 zombie mugs, that one post that had so many shares on Facebook, it actually took me over a month to complete those 3 from start to finish, which working, part-time in the evenings for 3 to 5 hours during the week, and then, 12 to 16 hours on Saturdays, and it still took me a month and a half just to do 3. So now that's a lot faster. I can get about 20 done, anywhere from 15 to 20 in a month time. So that's changed a lot for me. I've had my website for a long time, but I've set up, like you mentioned, set up a little shop on there where once I have the release, just like I had this pre-order, I just announce it on my social media pages, Instagram and Facebook. I do an announcement about a week before with the date and the time that it'll be released, and then that day and that exact time, I just publish that a link on my website, and then folks can go there and click on the link and take them to it's a buy it now link, so it takes them to PayPal where they can purchase the piece.
Yep. Well, 20 mugs sold in 24 minutes when they first went out. That's incredible. So I'm glad to hear that you had such great success. So originally, all of the mugs were thrown and then hand-sculpted?
Correct. Yes. Yeah. And I still do that. I still have some originals that I make, because there's still some people that want that. They want that very authentic, original piece that I build from the ground up.
And
but,
what?
Even the cast pieces though, they're still custom though.
Yeah.
Once I pull them out of that mold, it has a lot of, the sculpt is a lot of it's finished already. But I go in, and which is actually what I was doing right before you called me. I go in and I sculpt some more. I sculpt a lot of depth into it. And then I still have to fire them and glaze them 3 different times.
Yeah.
But those originals, what I do, I turn the basic form on a wheel. So we, whatever size I'm looking for, whatever shape, I turn it up on the wheel, and then once I take it off and let it get about right before it's leather hard, then I can kind of start forming it with my hands and just shaping it to the primary form that I want to work with. And then from there, I just add clay on. And I'm just really looking for a rough outline of what I plan on doing. And a lot of times I don't have a real plan going into it. I kind of just throw clay on there and kind of see what happens, and kind of go with, it kind of may sound kind of weird, but just kind of go with whatever the clay's kind of looking like. I mean, I have a basic idea, but as far as the details and all that go, I'm not really concerned with any of that yet. I'm just getting that primary form down. And then the face, the structure, the cheekbones, and the nose and mouth and all that, getting all that on there. Once I lay it down, then I let it dry out a little bit more. Typically, I try to let them dry naturally, just really slow under a plastic bag. You can rush it if you're, in a hurry. I'll throw a hairdryer on it and kind of harden it up. But I always like that natural flow. So I typically try to wait till the next day. And then I'll start adding, some of those secondary forms on there and kind of laying down that first layer of detail on there. So some of the main wrinkles and folds and all that, I'll put all that on there, and then I'll let it dry again. And sometimes it may take 1 to 2 days underneath that bag, and then I can come back to it. And by then it's pretty dry. And then I can get in there once the clay's really stiffened up. And I can carve a lot of the fine details, a lot of the really minute, wrinkles and all that. And I wind up doing that usually twice, 2 different stages to the fine details. I'll lay down that first stage and knock it down. And then I'll let it dry another day, and then I'll lay down the final layer of detail. So. The sculpting process usually takes, a week or more just to sculpt one. But, I usually try to have 2 or 3 going on at the same time, so that way when one's drying, I'm working on the other one.
So, to recap on this, you start with the thrown form, and then you take pieces of clay and attach them on to build the outline of the head, and then you let that dry a little bit. Then you add on more clay to start making the basic wrinkles, and then kind of like the shapes of the flesh, and then like the eye sockets and nose and where you're going to have the mouthpieces, and then you do another process where you start actually carving out the wrinkles and the larger indentations for the mouth and eyes and nose.
Correct. Yeah. Actually, the mouth and the eyes, though, that's one of the earliest stages, though. When that piece is still, soft, I just take. So yeah, and then I get into, like you said, like subtractive, sculpting. So then I'm taking away, I usually take away a lot. I usually add more than I need. Yeah. And bulk it out, and then I shave it down, and a lot of shaving. I kind of do just a little at a time. I've learned that over the years. I used to, there's really no easy way to do it that I've ever found. So I used to try to rush it and take a lot off. But now typically I just kind of do it in stages. I'll shave it down and check it, sit back and look at it and shave it down some more and get it to where, where it looks right to me, kind of where I want it to go.
After you've finished carving everything, what's the next step?
I let it dry, just to that natural drying stage. It's still green, so it's right before I fire it. And I actually lay down the base layer of glaze at that point. So I use airbrush, and I'll lay down that base layer, and then try to hit some highlights on it. Also, some of the open wounds, I'll hit those, and around the eyes, the dark around the eyes and the mouth and around the wounds and stuff. I'll add in some of those highlights, and then I'll take it to a bisque fire, that first firing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's 3 stages of glazing that I do. So that first stage is they're actually underglazes, Amico velvet underglazes.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't glaze the inside. That's the very last stage. And these glazes, the underglazes, you can fire them from like cone 06 to cone 6, and they hold their color pretty well all the way up to 6. It washes out some, which is actually what I like about them, because it dulls out some of those really bright colors, especially like on the zombie, and so you can get some really mute, dull natural colors on your piece. Once you actually fire it to 6. But, it's so hard to tell, though. It's really a huge learning curve working with the glazes, because unlike, if I was spraying on acrylics or, some kind of oil-based paint, you can pretty much tell, what color it's going to be. But these, glazes, they change so much in the fire. It's taken years, just to figure out.
Yeah, it's a lot of testing.
Glaze do, and then what does this combination of glazes do? This glaze over the top of this glaze, what does it wind up firing out? After the third firing even. So it's taken a long time to get, for me anyways, taking a while to figure out, kind of what to do. I'm still learning all the time. I still experiment all the time with different colors and stuff, and color combinations, and it is crazy. You never know what it's going to come out like, which is really cool when they turn out awesome. But when they don't, you're like, oh gosh, I just wasted all that time.
Yeah, it's very tricky.
Sometimes even you'll experiment with it, and then and it turns out how you want it to on the experiment, like on the test piece, and then you go and you do it on the actual. And for whatever reason, the kiln who knows, the firing fluctuated at some point.
There's hundreds of
there's
reasons.
Some humidity.
Yeah.
And it turns out different. So it's pretty wild. It's very interesting. It can be very frustrating, but it can be very rewarding too.
You go through 3 steps with that before you finally end up with the finished glaze, and the last step is you're just applying the glaze to the inside of the cup so that it's So it's food safe. That's my word. Food safe.
Correct. It's been shied away from oxides over the years, so I usually just stay with the Amico velvets, and I'll take their chocolate brown or their black, and I'll just do a wash over the piece, and then I'll fire it again, and then I'll some finishing touches, just different layering of highlights and different shading going on, and just give it some depth in some places, and like you said, then end on that food safe glaze on the inside and the top rim. That way, it's good to drink out of it, and with no worries.
Man, what a process! So at what point the teeth are the teeth and the eyes, are they carved as well, or do you add those into the sculpture?
Yeah, it's actually just a different clay body that fires out a real white color, and then I can add, different washes to it to get some yellows and stuff like that in there. So I actually form the teeth and the eyes separately. I actually turn the eyes on the wheel also, so I get a nice round form, and then I let it dry out completely, and then I, plug it into the piece and put my eyelids around it, and same thing with the teeth. I form those out by hand and let those dry out completely. And then I'll take my little sculpting tools and I'll just kind of carve on them to get the, I got the basic shape already, but I'll carve on them to get some of the details and shape them up. And then I, push them into the clay, into the soft clay. And then they actually pull the moisture out of the clay. So they wind up getting soft also. and you can sculpt on them a little bit, but you got to be really careful because they become very, very brittle. Which is cool with the zombies because I break off a lot of the teeth and, the edges and stuff, just kind of give them a ragged look. So, once they pull that moisture, I can snap them off, and it gives you a really ragged look to them. It's a pretty cool little process on there, for the teeth. So yeah, they're a totally different clay body that I use for the teeth and the eyes.
Wow. I mean, that's a lot of steps, and it's a lot of sculpting and carving as well. Basically you're only throwing the main form, and then everything else from there is sculpting, basically.
Yeah.
And so in some of these cases you're also hand applying the glaze as well, I guess, to do some of the different colorings, like on the scar tissue and
I do. Yeah, I do a lot of airbrush work. Majority of the glazing is with the airbrush, but yeah, I use some paint brushes too, for certain areas and for the washes, sponge those off once I paint those on and all that. So then it's another. It just depends on time, but it can be, it can take up to 2 or 3 weeks because those firings are pretty long.
Yeah.
Too, they take. And you got to fire them up to temperature, and then you got to let it cool down.
Yeah.
And then you got, so that first firing, it can take anywhere from 24 to 30 hours before I can get the piece out of there. Where it's cool enough to work on. And then I have the other 2 firings after that.
Yeah. And when you are, so, that was the process for the first original mugs. And those were the first ones that you sold, from the ground up. Everything is completely thrown and then sculpted and glazed and colored and everything. And then when you're starting to move more into casting, what are you casting? What's the form that you're casting that then you, because basically.
Yeah, so I have a plaster mold. So that plaster, it's pretty soft. You can scratch it with your fingernail. You have to be really careful with it. But it draws the moisture out of the clay. So what I do, I take that plaster mold and I pour casting slip into it. So it fills up the entire piece. So you can imagine a mug, just one solid, just liquid clay, basically. And then I let it dry down. It usually takes about 30 minutes for me to get the thickness, that I'm looking for. And then I pour out all the excess slip. And then so I'm left with that piece in there. It's hollow now. It's in the shape of a mug, and I let it dry until it, releases from the actual mold. So, that whole process there, that plaster's sucking the moisture out of the clay, so it's drying it from the outside in. And then it'll release from the mold, and then once I have it out, I have my piece that I can start working on. So it cuts out tons of the sculpting time, which, is allows me to produce more, especially for the demand that I have now. But, it allows me to also sell them at a better price too, because, those originals, like we just went over, they take so long to make, it's hard to, there's not a lot of people that are willing to buy those at the price that I have to ask for them. So, there are some, there's a lot of collectors out there that enjoy those pieces, but, these allow me to get them down at a better price range.
Yeah, exactly. How much did the original mugs go for, or what was the price range for the original mugs that were sculpted?
Yeah, the original mugs, they start out, a lot depends on the design and what all is going on, the teeth, eyes, obviously the more going on, the more they are, but they usually start out around $500 and go up from there.
Yeah.
I auctioned one off before Christmas on Instagram, and it went for $850 on there.
Why zombies, and why this interest in creating horror mugs?
Zombies are just cool. There's a lot going on with them, or they can be, or they can be very minimal. And there's so many different colors and textures, and you got open wounds that you can mess with, and even the eyes. There's a lot going on that you can mess with, and to me, it's one of the funnest pieces to me, just because there's so many possibilities. And they don't necessarily have to look a certain way, because it's dead, rotting flesh, or the eyes could be just nearly blind, or faded out. I really like messing around with the different colors in the eyes. And the teeth, all beat up and ragged and stuff. So there's just a lot of different possibilities with them, so I enjoy doing those.
You're going to have a giveaway that you're starting on January 1st.
Correct, yeah. 1st to the 10th. So it'll be one of the zombie mugs, one of the cast mugs. So, $220 value. And I'll actually, it'll probably be a little different, than the ones that I'm doing. I'll probably do something just a little different, whether with the eyes or the skin tones. I'll do something a little bit different just to make it, something a little bit more special for the giveaway. So I'll have it on my Instagram page and my Facebook page. So you'll be able to, it'll be a like and share giveaway. So if you share it on Instagram and Facebook, you get 2 entries.
Instagram, it's Turkey Merck Pots, which is Turkey, Turkey Merck, MERCK Pots, as a one word, Turkey Merck Pots. And Facebook is the same thing. So you can go Facebook / Turkey Merck Pottery and find the artist page and follow him Kevin on Instagram, which I love the amount of social that you're doing here, because there's just this really nice consistency and running the contests and keeping people updated and sharing all of these behind-the-scenes images and videos of the various stages. So those of you that are really interested in the process that Kevin described here, you can check out the social pages and you can see all of the mugs and all of his other work at all the different stages of firing and the different stages of sculpting, etc. Great social material. Just great material, great use of social, especially the Instagram with the videos that show the carving and how he's doing all of the wrinkles and the flesh and the outlines. So just great use of social.
So I've had tons of people want some videos, the glazing videos and some more sculpting videos. So I'll try to get those. May try to look into doing some YouTube that way I can do some longer shots.
Well, we're signing off for this week. Happy haunting.
This is a Haunted Attraction Network production. Achieve more with all our products at www.hauntedattractionnetwork.com.